There was a time when the shooter genre felt like it had reached its peak. A time when Gears of War 1 emerged onto the gaming scene like the locust on E-Day, rocking the industry to its core and changing how shooters would be viewed from here on out. How could Epic Studios possibly top something that already stood on what seemed like an unreachable plateau? The answer was failure. Gears of War 2 would fail you, and in doing so, become something even greater. Unlike the first game, which was largely seen as a risk by the higher-ups at Microsoft due to its, for the time, gratuitous amounts of gore, its sequel was met with a very different reaction. One of excitement. This confidence inspired Xbox to use a bold marketing strategy, using the Xbox itself as the stage on which they would build their audience and their hype. Their boldness to bring the marketing to the customer was shown during GDC 2008, where, alongside the reveal of the sequel, they would release a teaser trailer via the Xbox Marketplace showing off the new chainsaw dueling mechanic. This approach was complemented by interviews with various printed media all the way up until the release of Gears 2, even though online blogs have already been a thing for a while at this point and would have definitely granted them a wider, more global audience. This was because Cliff Bleszinski believed that online blogs could be safely ignored, as it was their job to pick up the hottest news from printed media and publish it online, making it essentially free press for the game. Over the next few months, Microsoft would position Gears of War 2 as their big ticket item and treat it like the equivalent of a summer blockbuster movie, but for games. During the 2008 E3 presentation, Gears 2 would be their centerpiece and showed off a new trailer, Rendezvous with Death, which depicted a battle scene in the Hollow and hinting at something going on with Dom, new images, footage, and a hands-on demo for those in attendance, and later a global demo. This presentation was meant to show off their design strategy of making everything bigger, better, and more badass. To hammer this home, Epic Studios revealed a limited edition version of the game that would contain a different cover art, a steelbook, a DVD with some behind-the-scenes footage, a concept art book, a replica of Dom's and Maria's photo, some story details, and a gold camo for the Lancer in PvP. And if you got the limited edition at Best Buy, you would even get a remote-controlled Centaur tank replica. All of that for just $10 extra. The modern gaming industry could never. Though while all of that was rather impressive for the time, the team was not done yet. They wanted their potential audience to truly get invested, and so they began their Last Day ARG campaign, in which around 1,000 bloggers and other big names in gaming media would be sent big, meaty cogs, and several more cogs being hidden in cities across the world with codes on them. Finding all cogs and all pieces of the code would unlock a website which would reveal more videos, images, audios, and story beats prior to the release. The team believed that, and I quote, "If they're rabid enough, and even if they hate each other, communities will come together," unquote, to create an unforgettable event that would stick with the community for a long time. With these strategies, the hype for the game rose and rose until it reached a fever pitch on the emergence day of Gears 2. Nowadays, midnight launches aren't really that special anymore, since the industry has shifted toward digital releases over physical ones, but back then, release day was a massive event. It was basically a mini version of those chaotic American Black Friday sales videos you can find on YouTube, where everybody's just going insane. Epic Studios really wanted to reward those dedicated enough to show up at midnight. Attendees were given codes for a gold camo hammer burst in PvP, and while that was neat, it wasn't what made the night truly memorable. What made the release night unforgettable was the presence of the devs and the voice actors. People like Cliff Bleszinski, Rod Ferguson, and writer Josh Ortega showed up, along with voice actors like John DiMaggio and Carlos Ferro. I'm very sorry if I butchered those names. They gave out merch, autographs, live interaction, the whole shebang. Gears 2 even made noise outside of the gaming space. There was this absolutely hysterical article from the New Yorker in 2008 that pointed out how games like Gears of War don't have things like scores, health bars, and lives, and that heading right on screen wasn't the only direction anymore, showing that gamers were in such a niche that the average Joe would never hear of the gigantic leaps in technology that were happening in the gaming space. It's absolutely adorable. With the exceptional reception of Gears 1, selling over 5 million units in its first year, it was clear to Cliff Bleszinski that a sequel was all but guaranteed. So, Epic began work on Gears 2 almost immediately after shipping the first game. In an interview, Cliff revealed that they wanted to hone in more on the overarching story and dark tone for the sequel, making sure it permeated every aspect of the game. Gears 2 was seen as a project that had to add flourish to an already great, if a little drab, base. And with a fixed release date looming, development had to change across the board. One of the first major changes was getting a special envoy to directly relay needs between Epic and Microsoft, cutting through the usual bureaucracy to get something approved or changed. This helped a lot, especially since they adopted a best idea wins mentality, meaning that if a new idea beat out a current one, they would just adjust everything to make that idea work. One example was executions. During the playtest, Cliff asked why he couldn't just stomp a downed locust. Everyone in that room agreed that was weird, and just like that, executions were born. These ideas didn't just come from the staff either. Epic kept an eye on online forums and implemented fan feedback when possible, always trying to balance what players wanted with their own vision. Epic wasn't just working off of spur-of-the-moment ideas. Instead, at the beginning of development, in response to the set timeframe, they made a list of 35 things to make bigger, better, or simply to add more of. I could only dig up a few of these in my research, like the party system, bots, netcode optimization, improved ease of play, and a stronger focus on getting the plot across clearly. As the party system and bots are pretty self-explanatory, let's jump to ease of play. According to Cliff and Rod Ferguson, who had joined Epic as producer shortly before Gears 1 launched, they took in a lot of feedback on how the gameplay felt. One major gripe was how running, dodging, and taking cover were all tied to the same button, which sometimes made the player get snagged on cover when they were just trying to dodge or keep running. In Gears 2, they let players separate those inputs, though I didn't know that was a thing, so I was still doing it the old way like a dumbass. Well, that would have been great to know at the beginning somehow. Another big piece of feedback was that Gears 1 was too hard and didn't have enough schmeat on its bones, so Gears 2 came with more difficulty options, dynamic difficulty for co-op, and an overall longer campaign. And since we're already on the topic of the campaign, in my previous video I mentioned how the game's plot was so exceedingly straightforward, I managed to cram it into a 1-minute summary. That will not be the case this time, trust me. That straightforwardness made the story feel shallow in the eyes of Epic and gamers, so they decided to flip the script and make something so dense, so ever-present, that unlike last time, where my notes fit on half a page, this time they took up 6 goddamn pages. Talk about compensating. This absolute heel turn from a plot as non-existent as Marcus's neck to an actually deep story that takes itself seriously required someone who could both expand the lore and push the emotional weight to the forefront. That someone was the previously mentioned Joshua Ortega. Brought on as lead writer, Ortega worked closely with Cliff and Rod Ferguson to handle the full script and steer the game's tone. His focus? Show the horror of war, not just through destruction, but through personal tragedy. The gut punch of Dom's and Maria's fate? That emotional roller coaster? That was all Ortega. And to make sure players actually got the story this time, the team also decided on repeating objectives by cutting up a large objective into multiple smaller ones that would repeat the overarching objective as the end goal, driving home key plot points through gameplay structure. And as you can tell with how often I said objective in this one paragraph, you probably know this paragraph is about the objectives. Hey there everyone, this is Hawks from the future, and I'm just butting in here real quick to make a small announcement. We have channel memberships now. There's only one tier for 2 whole schmeckles. I know, quite a lot, but it gets you some neat bird-themed badges and emotes. And aside from that, if you do decide to grant upon me your hard-earned doubloons, you will also get my videos a week early, and you will also be shouted out at the end of each and every video. However, if you don't want to get a membership, that is all good too. Your viewership is quite enough for me and always appreciated more than you could possibly think. Alright, I'll leave you to the video again now. Ortega's approach to the story also reshaped the characters. Dom was made the player's surrogate, allowing Marcus to remain a blank slate. That way, if the plot required a choice the player might not agree with, it wouldn't taint the way we see Marcus. It would fall on Dom, who took on all the questions, rash decisions, and emotional outbursts. Marcus, by contrast, was meant to be the rock and, crucially, the lens through which the player saw the world. The one who always knew, or at least seemed to know, what to do next. Together, they formed one complete character, Dom as the voice and the emotions of the player, and Marcus as the hand and the eyes of the player. And speaking of what the player sees, what do you picture when you think about the first game? The train at the end with the dark brown skies streaked with black? Or do you see the grey pillars? Because that's what I see. I see the grey pillars. Apparently, that's what most people remembered Gears 1 for.
It's you! It's you! How could you, man?
Even Cliff found this disappointing, citing criticism that it was dull. And that criticism isn't entirely unwarranted. Even in the Ultimate Edition. Sure, there's some greenery, but it's mostly browns and grays. The devs agreed with that sentiment, and looking at Gears 2, things definitely got brighter. You can see the hollow lit up in various blues, Emulsion Lakes casting caves in yellow, the inside of the Alaskan bullworm throbbing with pinks and reds, and the Queen's Palace filled with golds, oranges, and greens, I think. And to show that the game was no longer designed to look like solidified shit and concrete, it was deemed that Gears 2 should have Vista moments. Moments in which the set pieces, the areas, the world itself could be displayed in a way that allowed the player to gawk at it for a while before getting back into the action. One of the biggest examples here would be the initial offensive with the hillbilly truckers, showing off a vast battlefield with tons of enemies next to a lush green forest under a clear blue sky with a wide field of view. But this brought up an issue: believability. On such massive battlefields, infantry wouldn't normally just use weapons like the Lancer, shotguns, or snipers. Sure, they would, but those are guns made for smaller skirmishes. No way in hell the COG or Locust didn't also come up with weapons made to wipe out larger hordes in these kinds of situations. So the team developed new weapons that would logically fit into these large-scale encounters: the Mulcher and the Mortar. Sadly, Unreal Engine 3 as it existed wasn't built to fully bring all of this to life. So, Epic created Unreal Engine 3. Well, not really, they upgraded UE3, but you get what I mean. Allowing for more actors on screen, meaning more enemies, characters and stuff, better lighting, destructible environments, to a degree, improved water rendering, upgraded development tools, and physics-based tree movement. Wait. Is that not the same pitch Anthem used?
You can see the trees being blown over and stuff like that. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
Was Anthem really trying to score points with something that Gears 2 already did? What the fuck? These changes let the team amp up player interaction, using Locust as meat shields, chipping away cover, and improving in-game models while using fewer polygons, which definitively would have helped out the 3D artists, as some characters would take up to 6 weeks to fully create. And a last little fact before we move on, Gears of War was originally envisioned as more of a Battlefield-style game before evolving into the tight, cover-based shooter we know today. Though, the only thing that Gears has in common with Battlefield are the multiplayer modes. Gears of War 2 features the already known modes from its predecessor: single-player story, co-op story, and PvP. But this time around, Gears has a new addition, something that would hopefully not make you want to rage as much, or make you rage even more depending on what you were looking for: Horde mode. Out of these modes, I specifically want to highlight two: co-op and Horde mode. Co-op was made to be a sort of onboarding system for new gamers to get into gaming proper in a fun and very involved way. Not only would they have the troubles of playing a game for the first time, but they would have those troubles together with someone else, turning the initial frustration and confusion into memorable or funny moments that you and whoever you were with will remember for ages. And it made the absolutely revolutionary decision to individualize the difficulty for each player. Meaning, if your newbie buddy wanted to play on easy, the game would adjust the stats of that buddy and the enemies accordingly. However, if you chose the hardest difficulty because you were an absolute gamer, the game would individually adjust the stats in your instance of the game to be much more unforgiving, allowing for both of you to have fun in your own way. In 2008, why did we not adopt this in every game since? How is this not the norm? Holy shit! On the other side of the spectrum is the Horde mode. Unlike the co-op story mode, Horde mode was meant to actually not be beaten, or rather meant to not be beaten without trying your asses off. It was meant to emulate the feeling of going to the arcade. Never truly beating the game, but always trying to get further and further, only to be brutally beaten down again and again, chasing ever higher scores. I would talk about PvP and how popular it is, but I personally didn't find anything too interesting to talk about, aside from, yeah, it was solid. But was it as solid as the story? The story this time around is so dense, it is somewhat insane to see how it went from essentially an action flick to this deep action drama. And because of that, there's a little more to talk about, especially the theme of failure, which will become very apparent very fast. A few months after the end of Gears 1 and the Lightmass bomb destroying the Hollow, Gears 2 picks up with the revelation that what was destroyed was not actually the entire Hollow, but just a section known as the Outer Hollow, meaning the bomb may have done some damage to the Locust forces, but not even close to what the COG had hoped for. Here we meet some familiar faces in the form of Marcus, Dom, and the Walking Death flag. Due to as of yet unknown circumstances, the Locust attack has been more aggressive than ever before, now assaulting the Jacinto Plateau directly. After meeting up with yet another COG soldier, Ty Caliso, your team pushes back the assault of the Locust, and you are informed that Anya may have further information on the whereabouts of Dom's wife, who has been missing for over 13 years. This lead, sadly, goes cold, causing Dom to crash out. Following the successful defense against the Locust, the COG leader initiates a counteroffensive to take the fight underground, as reports warn that the Grubs are now capable of sinking entire cities. King Ravens, hundreds of infantry, and some painfully stereotypical truckers roll out in massive trucks, but things don't go as planned due to a brutal counteroffensive launched by the Locust. Marcus and Dom push through the chaos and board a grind lift when they witness Ty being held up by a special Locust named Scourge, who easily destroyed a COG tank and will surely have an equally threatening boss fight. In the Hollow, the COG forces become scattered across different skirmishes until they stumble upon the Locust's secret weapon, a massive, ancient creature known as the Alaskan Bull Riftworm. After surviving an ambush with the help of the series' true main character, the Coal Train, and reuniting with Baird, the squad attempts to return to the surface. While doing so, they come across a torture barge and find Ty alive, but severely maimed. Though they free him, he takes his own life with a shotgun, traumatized beyond repair after just a few hours in captivity and torture. Shortly after recovering from the shock of an old friend's and a respected war hero's suicide, the team presses on. While evacuating, they're swallowed by the worm, forced to fight through it and perform open-heart surgeries that kill it because they use ChatGPT to write their thesis. Assholes. After being birthed by the worm's corpse, the squad is sent to the New Hope facility to track down the location of the Locust HQ. There they uncover logs documenting heinous experiments performed on the children of miners infected with emulsion. These twisted experiments led to the creation of the Sires, monstrous creatures that seem to be the missing link between Locust and humans. Among these logs, the team also finds the location of Locust HQ, quickly traveling there to prepare an assault to bring the fight to the Locust. Here they find a group of stranded who point them towards the Nexus and the potential location of Maria. Once in the stronghold, Dom and Marcus find Maria, much to Dom's relief. Maria first appears to be uncannily okay. So well, in fact, it is no surprise that what we have seen was just Dom's delusion. Maria, in reality, is horribly scarred, malnourished, blind, and most likely lobotomized. Seeing her in this state makes Dom completely break down, even though, deep down, he knows what must be done. Dom says his final goodbyes to Maria and shoots her. A neat potential detail to point out here is that Marcus may actually be listening for a second gunshot, since he stops moving and looks back due to his past experience with Ty's death. From here on out, it is simply all-out war. The team storms the Locust Queen's palace, find out that the Locusts are having a civil war with glowing Locusts, call in the troops, and battle Scourge, the Locust priest that controlled the Riftworm. The team finds out that the Locusts are trying to collapse the Jacinto Plateau to both defeat humanity once and for all, and also flood a giant emulsion reservoir underneath the plateau. They decide that sinking the plateau is a good idea actually, but want to do so before the Locusts can evacuate. They hijack a Brumac to destroy the pillars holding up the granite plateau, but it gets infected with emulsion and goes fully lambent, which they exploit to blow up Jacinto and ride off into the sunset. This is where the story ends, but an ending narration by Queen Myrrah hints at a foreboding fate that is yet to come to the fore, and a post-credit scene, eat your heart out Marvel, which reveals that Adam Phoenix is still alive and is not happy with our shenanigans on Jacinto. As we previously learned in the video that you can watch by clicking on the top right now, Serra, the world where Gears of War takes place, is a planet torn apart by war. In this grim, ruined world, humanity fights for survival against an overwhelming threat from below, forcing the survivors into a desperate offensive against the encroaching darkness. This offensive dealt major damage to the Horde by wiping out the Krill, making the night safer, and incinerating troops in the Outer Hollow. And that is where the setting last left off. Though this may have seemed like a victory, it turned out to merely be the opening act of an impending catastrophe. If you've reached this point in the video, you may have picked up on a theme that permeates the entire story and even the multiplayer design strategy: failure. This game is meant to fail you. It makes you fail so you can desire to fight on and try again. Between Gears 1 and 2, the Serrans have deteriorated badly. Their last refuge, the Jacinto Plateau, is under heavier attack than ever, straining resources and pushing the COG to become more authoritarian, conscripting civilians, bribing the stranded with protection for their families if they sign up, and lying to diseased soldiers that they'll recover just so they can shove them back into battle. No longer are they stopping a bigger assault. They poked the Wasp's nest with a nuke, which the fucking Wasps survived, and now they're coming for everything the Serrans held dear. Gears 2 takes the victory of the first game and reframes it as a hollow victory. Meanwhile, the Locusts are revealed to be anything but mindless. They have their own culture, their own religion, and way more organization than we ever imagined. No longer simply killing Serrans, but abducting them, enslaving them, and torturing them, either for stress relief or twisted information gathering. Their new aggression has a reason, hinted at all the way back in Gears 1. Something's wrong with the emulsion. In the first game, we saw glowing wretches, but no one knew what that meant. Now in Gears 2, the Locusts go all in with this assault because the lambency can't be contained anymore. It's breaking out, infecting them, and sparking a civil war they're actually losing. This game doesn't just show the failure of the light mass offensive, but personal failures too. Marcus missing the signs with Ty until it was too late, Dom arriving just a week too late to save Maria after searching for her for 13 years, and the COG's failures, such as covering up Rustlung, experimenting on children, and failing to fend off the Locust. And while these external threats rise, the writers decided the stakes still weren't high enough. A people at war for nearly a century changes fundamentally. war stops being an anomaly and becomes their identity. War becomes their home, the modus operandi, their new normal. The Terrans worship war, celebrating new offensives, praising heroes, eagerly joining the fight. But the writers remind us that if you worship war, you owe it tribute, and it has come to collect. The game hints at even darker secrets. People are shown suffering from rust lung, a pneumonia-like disease with a deadlier, murkier origin, likely from the Lightmass offensive. Then there's the New Hope facility, where sires, horrific results of human experimentation, were created, hinted at through lore about child experimentation, outbreaks, and staff murders. But the game leaves those breadcrumbs for you to piece together. And this theme of failure, it isn't just in the story, it's baked into the gameplay itself. Horde mode is designed to push you and your friends to the brink. It wants you to lose so a win feels truly earned. And PvP, well, okay, I don't think I need to explain how failure is built right into that experience. It keeps you coming back again and again and again, just as if you were in an arcade where the games were just hard enough to not let you reach the desired goal. Just like its predecessor, Gears of War 2 was a massive success, earning critical acclaim thanks to Epic Studios truly delivering on their bigger, better, and more badass promise. Critics loved it, fans went nuts, and Xbox Live servers lit up like it was New Year's Eve. Reviewers praised its explosive visuals, refined cover-based shooting, and the emotional weight the story dared to dip its toes into, all while staying true to that over-the-top war movie energy that made the first one stand out. It was basically just more Gears of War, but louder, bolder, and with more enemies to chainsaw. The campaign was widely considered to be better than any shooter had the right to, and the game walked away with awards in all the usual categories, chief among them Best Shooter, Best Co-op, and Best Graphics. This proved that Epic didn't just catch lightning in a bottle. No, this proved they knew what they had was special and understood how to improve on it in all the areas that mattered. Gears 2 cemented the franchise as one of the defining heavy hitters of Xbox. And of course, it sold like crazy. Over 2 million copies were bought in the first weekend alone, making it one of the fastest selling games on the Xbox 360 at the time. By the end of its first year, it had passed the 5 million units sold mark, and once again helped spike Xbox Live subscriptions with its multiplayer modes. However, not everything was perfect. The PvP mode had a rough launch with matchmaking issues, weird balance problems, and shotgun mechanics that felt kind of off. But Horde mode was a different story. It was an instant hit and became a mainstay of the series going forward, allowing players to test their skills against waves of punishingly unrelenting foes. Now, having played the first 2 games and having nothing but positive words to say about them, I cannot wait to see how the trilogy concludes.